Hey guys, Creepy Fox here. Welcome back to another True Scary Stories video, this time covering creepy Disney cast member stories. Now, did you know your boy the Creepy Fox used to work there for a time, 2018 to 2020? But today isn't about me. Instead, it's about covering true and scary experiences that have happened to my fellow Disney cast members. Now, if you've been subscribed for the last few years, you might remember I covered some Disney stories back in the past. I think it was 2022 to be exact. But since then, more cast members have shared their stories. So I figured as a special episode, well, I'd just go ahead and compile all the Disney stories into this one big video. Anyway, do make sure to subscribe if you are brand new, and if you are a current or former Disney cast member and you'd like to share your story for an upcoming episode, then you can do so with the user submissions email on screen, tcfnarrations@gmail.com. But with all that said, let's get started, shall we? I'm not sure if there's just something wrong with some people. Not really trying to paint everyone here with the same brush, so don't get the wrong idea. Or is it just that some people think that it's generally okay to threaten you and treat you like garbage? Anyway, I want to go ahead and tell you about this really freaky incident that took place back in the summer of 2015. For quick context, this comes from a female who at the time was 25 years old. I work at and continue to work at Disneyland as a host at the Blue Bayou restaurant, and on this afternoon in question, I boarded the bus from the bus station in Fullerton, California, and then I took my seat in the back, quickly taking out my headphones and putting on some music to unwind and pump myself up, so to speak, for what was sure to be quite a busy evening. Summers at Disney, as some of you might know, are notoriously brutal. And by evening, most guests aren't going to listen to cast members, and they'll have a mind of their own, acting like children, and complaining if they don't get it their way. But alas, what's new? Sorry, I'm getting too ahead of myself. Anyway, the bus is pretty empty for the first 10 or so minutes, so not much is really going on. An elderly couple sat in the front, another woman and her two kids were in the middle seats, and a guy around my age, with a really cool Paramore t-shirt, sat just a couple of seats ahead of me. When we crossed into Anaheim, California, and we stopped in front of a 7-Eleven, it's here when we picked up a large crowd. A fellow cast member joined the bus riders, a custodial member to be exact, and just as the bus driver was about to leave, another man manages to make it and boards the bus. He looked pretty beat up, so to speak. Not trying to be mean here, but essentially my best guess was he might have been homeless, judging by his torn clothing with holes in his pants, and the shoes being torn in the front, where you can see his toes popping out. He's also got a long unkempt beard and a thinning hairline too. As I watched him about to take a seat in one of the middle rows, he happens to look right at me, and as we lock our eyes, I can see his expression change. He opened his mouth and smiled at me, and it's now I can see he's got these really yellow crusty teeth. I remember letting out this nervous sigh as I watch him walk up to me, and then he asks me if he could take a seat in the window seat next to me, which was currently unoccupied. I guess in a way it was a nice thing I wasn't sitting there, otherwise I would have been trapped. As to not blow something out of proportion, since technically speaking he hasn't done anything wrong, and all the other seats were pretty much full now, I said sure, and he squeezes by me. This smell of lingering alcohol and cigarette smoke quickly entering my nostrils in the process, which almost caused me to puke. "Hey, what's your name, gorgeous?" I can hear him say through my headphones, which were currently set to low volume as to hopefully get him to get the idea that I didn't want to speak to him since I had my headphones in. "Hey, I asked you a question. What's your name?" he said a little bit louder, causing some of the bus riders to look over in curiosity. I sighed and looked over to him and then pointed at my name tag, which I currently had on, and I said, "It's Erica. Sorry, I couldn't hear you." This acknowledgement of me speaking to him was what caused him to start asking me a bunch of other random questions, to which I just gave him short answers, hoping that by doing so, he would leave me alone and just keep to himself. Yeah, for whatever reason it seemed that these minutes were feeling more like hours, and his body odor was really causing me to borderline want to pass out, or at least even throw up. "Hey, would you like to go out on a date with me?" he asks, to which this time I just straight up ignore him and just continue to look down at my phone. I said, "Do you want to go out with me?" he asks me again. This time, however, he's a lot more silent about it, but the way he said that sentence was filled with a lot more aggression. I ignored him again and continued to look down at my phone, and this is when he does something pretty unexpected. He grabs my phone, which pulls out my earphones, which actually kind of hurt a little bit, by the way, and then with an angrier tone similar to that of Will Smith, you know exactly which incident I'm speaking of, he tells me, "Are you deaf or stupid? Which one is it? I'm asking you if you want to go out on a date with me. Don't you know how this works?" I was so scared at that moment, and I was really hoping somebody was going to speak up and come to my defense, but everyone then in that moment looked away and down at their phones, as if nothing had happened. Thanks a lot, everyone. By this point, we're just a few moments from reaching the bus stop in front of Disneyland on Harbor Boulevard, and in my head I'm just saying, just relax, grab your phone back, and stand up, and begin to make your way to the door for a quick exit. All of this, mind you, as I'm fighting back tears and a panic attack. "Sorry man, I have bad anxiety and I listen to peaceful music to try and relax. Maybe some other time." To my surprise, he throws the phone back at me, nearly missing my face, and one last time he asks if I would reconsider going out with him for dinner. The bus now makes its stop, and in one quick motion, I just get up and sprint on over to the exit. Of course, everyone is getting off here. I watched as the custodial cast member just walks past me with a quickened purpose and goes about his merry way. I was really hoping he could have at least kept me company, but to myself I say, the ordeal is over, the man is long gone. All of that was just for about 5 seconds or so, because when I hear my name being called, I look back, and the man is running up to me with a really angry look on his face. At this point, I didn't care. I book it straight to a nearby security guard who is sitting in his little green booth, and he's taking his time to come out. The creep from the bus now comes up to me, and no joke, he says, "I'm going to slit your throat, and then I'm going to have my way with your dead body." Then just like that, he super sprints out of there as I watched him head down the street, disappearing into the crowd, walking on Harbor Boulevard. At that point, I broke down in tears, and I fall down to the ground as I begin to have a panic attack. I remember the security guard asking again and again on what had just happened, to which I continue to struggle to get words out. Finally, as another guard walks over to me, the adrenaline in my system starts to relax, and I start to explain what had just happened on the bus. This lady security guard who came up to me now gives me a huge embrace and says the creep is no longer here and he was not going to hurt me again, which thank God she was at least right on that one. I did end up reporting the incident to the Anaheim Police Department, but unfortunately nothing really came up. Also to this day I've never seen that creep again, so sometimes I do wonder what might have happened to him. Not so much because I want to know about his well-being, screw him, not after what he did, but mostly because at times when I'm by myself, I'll sometimes get anxiety wondering if he might be secretly watching me from afar. Yeah, it might sound weird to some of you out there, but when you have experienced something so traumatic, it tends to stick with you for many years. But anyway, sorry that this submission is getting to be so long. I just wanted to share my story here with the Creepy Fox in hopes that all of you can learn from my experience. Be safe out there, and take care. Hi Creepy Fox family. I'm a former Disney cast member who worked in attractions from 2016 to 2020. For context, this comes from the perspective of a female who is currently 26 years old. In fact, I still remember my very last shift. It was at Pirates. It was a 4-hour evening which saw very little foot traffic. If only we knew what would be awaiting us and the rest of the world. But anyway, this one shift I showed up to would be for GSO, or Guest Show Operations. For those unfamiliar with Disney terminology, you're pretty much assigned to help with controlling the traffic of guests as they go about their Disneyland adventure. I started at 6:45 p.m., but I'd shown up early at around 5:30 p.m. to pick up the outfit for GSO in the costuming building since I hadn't rented it out yet. Once I was done, I walked over to behind Space Mountain's backstage area, which is a huge space that has a small cafeteria where cast members eat and hang out, and I was here at a table, looking at my phone while I was awaiting for my friends to arrive. About 10 minutes of browsing through Reddit, I looked up and saw my friend, who in this story I'm going to go ahead and call her Emma, and she comes up to me and takes a seat. We were now catching up as I hadn't seen her in about a week, and while I showed her some pictures of my boyfriend and I who had gone hiking, we got approached by a random cast member that we had never met before. He had the same GSO outfit as us. He appeared to be in his early 60s, had short white hair, was clean-shaven, a bit on the heavy-set side, and was around my height, 5'7". He asked if he could take a seat with us at the table, to which we of course said yes, because we all work here, why wouldn't we say no? And he soon starts to ask us a bunch of innocent-sounding questions, just basically things like, "Hey, how's it going? Excited for tonight's shift? What attractions do you work at?" etc. We speak with him as he seems really friendly, and then he starts to randomly talk about government conspiracies. "You know, those Greys are working with the government, and they're kidnapping people." When he said that, Emma and I kinda just looked at each other and were like, okay. Really strange for him to bring up something like that, but you do you. Some more friends now joined us, and he then starts to grow quiet as our friends are looking at us with expressions of, "Hey, who is your new friend?" He never introduced himself to them. He just ended up getting up and heading over to the meeting spot for our GSO shift to begin. He told us about aliens and the government. Kinda strange to bring up, wouldn't you say? We mentioned to our friends, who just laughed it off and told us to forget about him. However, don't forget about him just yet, as he is going to be playing a part of my creepy story. Fast forward to the start of the shift, and the leads and trainers show up. We were now reviewing the night's plan of action, and the conspiracy guy, who I guess for my retelling we can call him Arthur, comes up to me, albeit a little bit too close. Then he gets this smile over his face when we're paired to work together with about 3 other cast members, none of which I know. Well, he hasn't done anything worth mentioning yet to cause any sort of alarms to go off, and I wasn't the type of person to jump to conclusions, so I just sighed, knowing none of the friends I knew would be anywhere close to me that night, and we are soon dismissed. We exit the backstage area, and now we take our spots by the entrance of Tomorrowland, right in front of the Astro Orbiter. The time is approximately 7:30 p.m. Arthur is standing next to me as we now begin to greet guests and help them with their questions. About 20 minutes in between guests, Arthur asks me whether or not I had seen this movie on Netflix, and he goes on to say that I should watch it and it's really good. I said, "Okay, that sounds cool, I guess," and I walk away. "Don't forget the name of the movie," he shouted, to which I said, "Yeah, okay, I won't forget." To be honest, I had more important things to worry about than some random movie he told me to watch, which by the way, I don't even remember the name of the movie even to this day, lol. Anyway, after the first and only break, he had gotten busy with his own duties, and I'm standing next to a male cast member by the Astro Orbiter again. He was around my age and was really cool. He liked anime like me, and we were talking about anime recommendations for shows while we weren't busy with the guests. "There you are, sweetheart. I finally got a chance to come back to you." It was Arthur. "Hey, so do you remember that movie I told you about? You didn't forget the name, did you?" I had paid half attention to the name of the movie, and since I was so focused on working, I didn't really care. However, he did. "Yeah, I kind of figured. That's what's wrong with this young generation. You don't pay attention to anything you're told, and you make yourselves look really stupid." Oh, the way he said that passively aggressively really got under my skin. I really wanted to say something right there and then, But before I do, my coworker, the one I was standing next to talking about anime, says, "Look man, that's not cool. Just forget about it and go help the cast member over there." He had to either way since there is a rule at Disneyland called the grouping. Yes, even more Disney lingo. Basically, you aren't allowed to have more than 2 cast members standing or grouping by each other during a shift. It's to avoid you getting distracted since your primary focus is supposed to be helping the guests, not chit-chatting in groups. Yes, there's no problem with 2 chit-chatting, it's just you gotta keep it to a minimum, and you gotta make sure you never have your back turned at the guests. Anyway, he kinda just says, "Okay, whatever," and then he walks away. Yeah, don't even bother with that guy. He's kind of a jerk. The last time I worked with him, he was giving me a really hard time as well, but I just ignored him and he eventually gave up. I took his advice and figured that if he did continue to give me a hard time, I would just tell somebody on the leadership team. So fast forward to the end of the shift, and I'm clocking out. I'd now said goodbye to the new cast member friend I'd made, as well as my other friends, and I'm sitting at a bench backstage, waiting for my ride to get there, so I can then start walking over to Harbor Boulevard, where there is a guest drop-off area. Guess who comes over to me? The Arthur guy. "Hey, what are you doing after work? Want to grab some food?" I had enough at that point. I didn't care if he had a change of heart or not, as I didn't appreciate the way he had treated me. Since I already had my phone out, I put it up to my ear and then start to speak in Spanish, pretending like I was talking to my mom. I now say in my head, "Screw it, I'll just wait at the guest drop-off, even if I knew it was going to be a wait." Luckily, Arthur doesn't follow me, but geez, what a jerk, I'll tell you. I ended up seeing Arthur a few more times in the coming weeks, and on another shift of GSO, he wasn't in my group this time, but either way he walked over to me as I'm talking to this really nice family, and he interrupts us and says, "Ah, my daughter. Isn't she really a sweetheart? She's an amazing cast member. I hope she's helping you out." He was talking about me. Now I won't lie, him calling me his daughter and having this really creepy smile on his face when he said it was one of the weirdest things in the world. Even the family I was helping kinda just looked at him and said, "Whatever, dude." He tried to start a conversation with us, but luckily at this moment, one of the leads calls me over, and I went over to help him. Who knows whether or not he told that family any more lies about how I was his apparent daughter, or whatever. Anyway, I soon took GSO out of my priorities for my list of work locations, and instead I worked at my attraction and at Phantasmic. If I ever got GSO, I would just switch it out for something else. A shame, as I really liked GSO, but it was ruined by him. To this day, I regret not reporting the guy. I don't even remember his name to begin with. But yes, he was one of the rudest, creepiest coworkers I had ever worked with. So a little bit of background context. Back when I was still working for Disneyland in Anaheim, before our closure in March of 2020, I worked as a main gate receptionist. Every day I would ride my bicycle to and from work, and I've been enjoying the exercise for my 1.5 years of employment. Now, it's not that I couldn't afford a car, I just really enjoyed the exercise, and I thought driving 2 miles to work was pointless since I could avoid the annoying traffic. Well, let me go back to an evening right after I clocked out of work. It was 11:40 p.m., and it had started to rain, and I couldn't wait to get back to my house so I could enjoy the next 2 days off just watching Netflix and laying in my bed. I actually almost considered calling my dad and asking him to do me the favor of picking me up, but he had work the next morning and had to be up at 5 a.m. I really didn't want to be too much of a bother. Therefore, I just toughened up, and I told myself just hurry up and I'll be home in no time. Thus, I began making my way towards Santa Ana, south of Disneyland. The first 1.5 miles goes by fairly uneventfully, albeit I'm cold and wet, even with my work poncho on. Then, as if things couldn't have gotten any worse, the rain begins to pick up even more, and then the chain on the bicycle starts to malfunction. Yeah, of all times, It had to be then. Well, that was dumb. I opted to walk over to a gas station so I could let the rain settle for a while, as well as have an opportunity to fix my bicycle. First thing was first, however, I wanted something warm. Therefore, I parked my bicycle under the cover of the roof, and then I walked in and asked the cashier if they had any hot chocolate. They sure did, and so he now begins to prepare it for me, as I try to dry off next to a heater. Fast forward about 10 minutes, and I finally got a break from the rain. It had now dwindled to a light sprinkle. This was my opportunity. I returned back to my bicycle, still drenched from the downpour, and I begin to quickly put the chain back on its track. As I'm distracted, however, I hear footsteps make their way toward me. I assumed it was just somebody looking to get something from inside the convenience store. However, when I looked up, it was this homeless guy. I say hello as he just stands there and looks at me and my bicycle with this really weird look. It's like he was completely out of it or something. I ignored him and now try to get onto my bicycle, before moments later he pushes me off. "What's the big idea? What's your problem?" I scream back at him, trying to keep my composure as best as I can. But he responds by taking out a knife, and that's when my evening goes from bad to worse. I knew in that moment a bicycle really wasn't worth being attacked for, so I kinda just stood there as he got onto it and tried to get away. Now, remember how I was trying to fix the chain just a minute earlier? Turns out I hadn't done a great job, as just a few seconds later he falls over and he gets drenched in a puddle. I now use this opportunity to grab the attention of someone who just pulled up into the empty gas station, and this creep just makes a run for it, going across the street. I did manage to call the cops and give them a pretty good description, and thank God it didn't take them too long to have their guy. When all was said and done, I called my dad, who almost had a panic attack when I explained what had happened to me, but I was finally able to get back home close to 1:30 a.m., relieved, albeit tired, and ready for a long hot shower. For context, this comes from the perspective of a female who was 22 years old. This happened during one of my shifts of guest control in Tomorrowland in November of 2015. It was an 8-hour shift, and while it had started to rain halfway and we were offered to leave early, I chose to stay instead as I needed the extra money as I would soon be going on vacation. Now, since there wasn't really much to do, as a lot of guests had left and the park was dying down, I mostly hung out in the backstage area. That was of course allowed by the lead, who just told us that as long as we went out every now and then, we would be fine. I don't know how it works today for cast members and whether or not you can still do that, but back when I was working for the Mouse, they were really laid back. Anyway, we did eventually return back out for the 9:30 show, just without the fireworks, and we noticed that there were a bunch of strollers and those electric scooter things that people sit in, parked in one of the walkways, some with large ponchos over them. Now, fellow cast members know that walkways, strollers, and whatnot are a no-go, Joe, and since we knew we'd be yelled at if this was seen, we began to move everything just about a 10-second walk away from us, next to the Star Tours attraction. "Hey, where are you taking my stroller?" I heard behind me as I'm moving a Mickey Mouse-themed stroller. I turned around to see this pretty large woman that easily towered over me, with a really angry look on her face. "Oh, sorry, it's just that we can't have strollers in the walkway. I don't make the rules." Okay, I didn't say that last part, but if I can take a second to say here, a lot of Disney guests really need to stop shooting the messengers, that being us, as we only do these things because we're told to do so. Anyway, she snatches the stroller out of my grasp and then starts to threaten me and say that if I ever touched any of her belongings again, I was going to be sorry. Now, using my best customer service skills, I apologized and thought that this was going to be the end of it, but unfortunately it wasn't. "You aren't really sorry. This isn't the first time one of you idiots touched my stuff, and you've done things to cause an inconvenience." Well, great. Here we go. I once again am apologizing to the woman, hoping that she would just leave me alone, and she does seem to start walking away. but not before saying that she was going to kill me if she saw me again. Crazy, I got the chills at those words. Not every day somebody says they wanted to kill you. Regardless, I then turned my back to head toward my friends, who were by the stroller parking area next to Star Tours. This was when I got shoved out of nowhere, and I catch myself on the railing next to me. I now turned around to look, and it's the same woman. She really put her hands on me and assaulted me, didn't she? She didn't say anything after doing that. She just walked away, and I never saw her again. Now, I won't lie to you. I was pretty angry and shaken up by that. Never in my life working had somebody actually attacked me for doing something as simple as my job. My coworkers sadly weren't able to get many details of the woman since they were distracted with the strollers and nobody else saw what happened, so I wasn't much of help with giving a description as I'm bad with details. Regardless, I just tried to forget about the incident. Now, I know this might not be the scariest thing you've ever heard, but if being attacked by someone isn't considered scary and them saying they're going to kill you, then I don't know what's scary. So that's my story submission for you all. It's pretty cool that I've listened to your videos, Creepy Fox, and I've heard and I've seen there are some stories that come from Disney cast members. What a small world. I'm sure there has to be more of us who listen to your channel out there. Hopefully as the years come on by and you put out more videos, we get to hear more of their experiences. If you haven't already been able to tell, I'm a Disney cast member myself, working at Disneyland as an attractions host, but at the Matterhorn. This occurred in 2018, and although I wish I could say it was a scary incident that happened at the park, it instead happened outside of the park. Here's what went down. I worked that evening for New Year's, and I didn't get to my car until close to 1:30 in the morning. I still wasn't really tired, but I sure was hungry, so I thought to myself, what are my options? As I looked down at my phone, and then I remembered the taqueria near my house that's open every single day, even on New Year's. The plan was set. I drive approximately 20 minutes to the taqueria, and I was surprised to see quite a few vehicles waiting for their order in the drive-thru. I took this moment to think of what exactly I wanted, and finally, when it was my turn, I asked for some tacos de cabeza and tacos de lengua, with a large horchata to go alongside them. Once I pay, I exit through the drive-thru, and I make a 2-minute drive to my house, as luckily I'm not that far. Here's when everything begins. As I pull up into the driveway, bear in mind I still lived with my mom and dad, I happened to notice something that caught my attention. The side gate that leads you into the backyard just so happens to be opening and closing. Knowing my parents, they always sleep early. They are notorious for that, and it's not like we had a dog to take outside to use the restroom. I almost decided to write this off as my dad forgetting to close the gate, and the gate was just moving with the wind. But for some reason, I chose to head into the house, and then look through the kitchen window that overlooks the backyard. Am I glad I did so? Because all of a sudden, I was surprised to see 2 figures. Those figures became more clearer when the automatic porch light came on. 2 armed individuals wearing black clothing. Both had bandanas covering the lower half of their face. The tallest of the 2 has a crowbar, and the other has a knife. Now, it doesn't take a genius to realize that these 2 aren't here to repair the windows, nor the doors. They were here to rob the house. I now quickly head to my parents' room, basically giving them a mini heart attack as I tell them that there are 2 armed men in our backyard. My dad now grabs his shotgun and heads to the kitchen so that he could meet up with those 2 creeps. I was really scared, to be honest, and my mom reminded my dad to be very careful. Actually, she advised him to stay in the room with us as they called for the police, but he downright refused. Instead, he had me hold on to his pistol, lock the door, and said not to open it for anyone unless he heard our secret knock. The next minute felt like an eternity as we feared for my dad's safety, but luckily things went in the right direction. My dad describes that as soon as he opens the curtains of the back glass sliding door, He catches the two burglars as they try to pry open said door. My dad now raises the shotgun and tells them that they had a mere 3 seconds to leave, or he was going to shoot. The two drop what they're doing, and my dad describes as they run to the corner of the backyard and chose to jump over the fence into another neighbor's yard. My dad now went after them, but he soon loses them in the darkness. Police did arrive and did search the area, but unfortunately the two ended up getting away. Nothing was heard back from the police, and it sucks to think that to this day, those two burglars have never been caught. However, I am thankful that there have been no robberies in our neighborhood or surrounding neighborhoods, but part of me still wonders, what if? What if I hadn't shown up when I did? What if those two broke into my house and surprised my parents as they slept? Honestly, I don't know if they would have woken up to that noise, and even if they did, would my dad have had enough time to grab his guns? Who knows? But I guess it's better not to think of the negative. Let's stick to the positives that we were okay, and that New Year's didn't end terribly. Disney cast members, as well as Disney fans, know just how many secrets that Disneyland holds, whether it be secret passageways, Easter eggs scattered across the park, the many hauntings at the park. You're sure in for quite the history. Though my story doesn't deal with a real-life person, although I do have plenty of stories dealing with some pretty violent guests at the park, including one time an intoxicated guest tackled me. I wanted to instead share this experience of mine that I had one night in 2017 that I think would be perfect for the spooky season. For context, I'm male, and I'm a current Disneyland security guard working at the Anaheim location. So anyway, I'm working the night shift, and the announcement the park was closing had now rung throughout the entire park. I was in NOCC, New Orleans Critter Country for those who don't know, and my task was to ensure that there were no guests trying to hide and stay after hours, as it had happened plenty of times before. Actually, I did catch a couple of teenagers that night sneaking around the Pooh Bear attraction, but after telling them to leave, I then start to head back towards the Club 33 area, the New Orleans portion of NOCC. I have to pass in front of Splash Mountain first, however, which I do as some cast members walk past me, and we wish each other a good night. As I round the bend of the walkway in front of Splash, I can see toward the haunted mansion. It's now I'm able to see a short figure that appears to be sneaking around through a side gate to the mansion, which is next to the attraction's exit. They appear to be the size of a child, but it was hard to make out any details due to the lighting and distance. Where I saw the figure walk into, next to that exit area, there is basically a very small passageway with a gate, and behind that gate there is a little storage area where there are poles and signs that are used for the Phantasmic show. Well, clearly they didn't look to be a cast member, so I walked on over. She's not there, but I couldn't see the door opening as it was blocked from my view. I now called out at this moment as I began to open the door, and I said, "Hey, excuse me, but this area is off limits. You have to leave." An automatic light turns on, and nothing. No child-sized figure whatsoever. I tried and tried as I looked behind a set of storage boxes to see if maybe they were hiding there, but nothing at all. Okay, that's kinda weird. It gets weirder, because then just like that I heard something crash from behind me, and this is when I see a metal pole on the ground. I won't be ashamed to say that I screamed like a little girl at that point. It also didn't help that I suddenly felt this feeling of heaviness and even felt a very chilly cold spot. Bear in mind, this was in the summertime, and it was a warm and humid 80 degrees even at that time. I basically put the pole back to where it was and walked away, calling it in, to which my coworker on the other end laughed at me. However, little was I to know that this wouldn't have been the first time this had happened, as I've spoken with other cast members, and they claim to have also seen a childlike figure roaming around the area at night. If you don't know, a lot of people have brought ashes to Disneyland, and they've even scattered ashes inside the haunted mansion itself. I feel that this could be one of the many reasons behind the hauntings, as well as the strange apparitions. Also, interesting fact, not really related to the paranormal stuff, but for those who have never seen or been on the Haunted Mansion attraction, somebody actually shot at the glass in the section of the ride with the ballroom area with the ghosts dancing. There should be videos online so you can see it for yourself, but either way, still kinda crazy that somebody actually did that. Anyway, that's my story submission for you all. A little bit different from what you might be used to hearing, but nonetheless I'm sure it's interesting for both fans of Disney and cast members as well. If you're a cast member, I really recommend you share your paranormal stories with us if you have one, just like I did, as I know we would all love to hear them. Disneyland is supposed to be the happiest place on earth, a place where you can escape the daily routine of school and work and enjoy exploring your imagination. While most of the time it is, you do often have those rare oddities, situations really, that leave you at a loss of words. Now, before I begin, I want to give a shout out to Disney cast members. You're all amazing. Don't let some rude, entitled jerks who think they're the best thing since sliced bread get you down. I know you all have it tough, especially today in the 2021 era, but just know pretty much everyone in the world loves you for helping bring in the magic. With that said, I want to rewind to the year 2017, when we had a pretty gnarly experience at Disneyland. It was senior year of high school, and as an end-of-year treat, our high school planned a field trip for all of us up-and-coming graduating students. What a fun way to spend your day. Going on rides, being with your friends, and enjoying the awesome snacks and food. One last chance, if you will, to celebrate being young. In just a few months, all of us would be moving on, and our adult lives would officially begin. Now, in this story, it's going to be me, my friends Kelsey, Michael, and Megan. Not their real names, but you get the idea. As I mentioned, most of our day was dedicated to going on rides and eating all the snacks we could get our hands on. We did manage to catch a couple of the shows and even the parade, and by nighttime it seemed as if this end-of-year celebration was going to end on an all-time high. That was until we made it to the show Phantasmic. You know, that one our friend the Creepy Fox worked at. We had arrived to the area around 8 p.m., and we took our seats in the front of Pirates of the Caribbean. Yeah, I know, looking back at this now, that wasn't exactly the best spot. Don't get me wrong, you have a front row view, but for safety reasons you need to keep the area clear. Unfortunate, but some of that Disney magic was going to be made. You see, the cast member that came up to us actually offered to let us into a little special viewing area. It was usually reserved for special occasions, but what do you know? Lady Luck was on our side. When we got to the little spot in question, we were welcomed by this nice family who were also let in there. They were visiting from out of the country, somewhere in Mexico. I just forget exactly which state or city they mentioned. My friends and I hit it off with them pretty well as we also spoke some Spanish, and as the rivers of America began to get filled, so did my bladder. Darn me for drinking so many sugary drinks. This is when everything would start, and the plot to my scary experience would take place. Where to go to the restroom? Two options presented themselves. Option A, I could head toward Adventureland, right by Big Thunder Mountain, or B, right by Club 33 in the back corner. I chose to head to the restrooms by Club 33, seeing as I was being directed there by cast members anyways. Using the restroom was unexpected. Being a dude, it's quite quick. But it's when I step out and begin to make my walk in New Orleans that I see something going on. There was this guy, about late 20s, yelling at this other female, roughly the same age. I was going to just pass them and be on my way, but for some reason I felt something was off. Like if I or anyone didn't get involved, things might have ended pretty badly. Against all logic, I decided to walk on over, seeing as nobody else was saying anything, and in my 18-year-old mindset, I asked the couple if something was wrong. No kidding. It's like a switch had flipped in this crazed man's brain, because suddenly he turned his attention toward me. Then he pushed and shoved me, causing me to lose my balance and fall into a stand of chips. Finally, people let out a gasp and are looking at us, and I'm just sitting there on the floor in complete shock. All I did was ask what was wrong, what caused this guy to completely lose it and attack me. For real, you don't know what true fear is until you take a look into the eyes of a deranged man. One that reads, "I'm going to kill you. Don't you dare get involved in my business." Nonetheless, I get back up and ask the guy what the heck was his problem. And all I wanted to do was tell the guy not to yell at who I would later find out was his girlfriend. I guess just trying to be a good person at heart, you know? The guy gets up in my face, and at that moment I get this strong whiff, not just of bad breath, mind you, but of alcohol. Now, yeah, Disneyland is a dry park, at least during that time, but that doesn't stop people from getting their drink game on at Disneyland California Adventure, and then they come over to the original park. I finally had a bit of an explanation to this dude's behavior, but it's too bad things weren't finished just yet. The young woman at this moment now tries to get the man to stop and knock it off, but he pushes her, then yells at her and says he was going to kill her. His words, not mine, if she didn't shut up and listen to what he had to say. As I began to back up, trying my best not to let this guy's rage get to me, I turned to walk away as I figure it's not worth it. I would rather get security instead. No lie, as I'm walking away, I'm suddenly tackled to the ground. I hit pretty hard, and it's now I got this creep, scratch that, maniac really, crouched over me and yelling right into my face. Those moments went into slow motion, and I can't tell you how scared I was. I honestly thought, dear God, I might not just get put onto a stretcher tonight, but I'm going to be presented to my parents deceased. Well, maybe that was a little too much of a conclusion to jump to, but you get the idea. Thank the Lord, it's now finally some guests are coming to my rescue, and these three large men are restraining the drunk man who's flailing around like a magic carp. Security did arrive pretty quickly, and the man and his girlfriend were escorted away. I for one was left in complete shock, but lucky to have made it out of the scuffle with just a couple of bruises. Thank God he didn't try to put me into a chokehold or beat me up, because that would have been worse. Still doesn't take away the fact he pushed me to the ground and then began to yell at me like I was in the wrong. Now, yeah, a lot of you are probably going to wonder why I didn't do it, but I decided not to press any charges. I guess I just didn't really want to deal with seeing this idiot ever again, and I didn't want to deal with all the legal nonsense. He did apologize though, I'll give him that, and his girlfriend did end up sending flowers and an apology letter signed both by him and her. I have the little card in case anybody's interested in seeing it. Just let me know. Still, something does tell me he was barred from Disney for life, which serves him right. He doesn't deserve to go there ever again. I just hope the girlfriend did the right thing and left him. I for one would have never yelled at my girlfriend like that. I would have never told her I was going to kill her. Seriously, who even does that? Anyways, since that incident, I'm happy to report no scary scuffles or scary experiences to speak of. This happened in 2017 when I flew out to Anaheim, California to visit some of my friends for the Halloween season. Our plan was to go to Disneyland as part of Mickey's Halloween party. If you've never been to that event, it's essentially this separate thing that Disneyland holds every year where a certain quantity of tickets are sold. People will come and enjoy various events, including parades, trick-or-treating, fireworks, and so much more. My friends and I were cosplaying as our favorite anime characters from the series Love Live Sunshine. I was the character Mari, my other friend was Ruby, and her sister was Daya. Anyway, we spent the evening in the park having a great time while meeting others who recognized the characters we were cosplaying as. The guest who stood out the most, who I remember, was the girl who was also cosplaying as Hatsune Miku. super adorable for sure. As the night rolled on, I did start noticing that the same two men we had seen when we first got there were continuously following us around wherever we went. I mean, sure, there were a lot of people there, but this was starting to become pretty obvious. For a description of the two, one looked to be in about his late 30s, wearing a blue sweater with a Disneyland logo on it, khaki jeans, and some Converse. His little blonde ponytail is what stood out to me the most. The other appeared to be in his 50s, wearing a Lakers jacket, black jeans, running shoes, and he's bald and has a large beard. At any rate, we did end up finally losing them in Fantasyland, and my friends and I started to chill out a bit, telling ourselves maybe we were overreacting, so we forgot about them. About an hour later, it's around 11:30 p.m., and the park is going to be closing in about 30 minutes. At this point, my friends left before me as they actually got a call from their mom saying they needed to be home. They lived here in Anaheim, where Disneyland is located. My friends did offer to let me stay at their house, but I had already planned my vacation to stay at the Marriott hotel that was nearby. Thus, they bid me a good night, and they're soon on their way. Now it was just me, but before leaving the park, I went ahead and go to the shop on Main Street so I can get a couple of souvenirs for my little brother back at home. So, I'm in the store looking around at the various toys, minding my own business, when once again I was able to see the two I had seen about 45 minutes earlier. They were just entering the store, and right away I did my best to hide. Sadly, it appeared I had been spotted, because they now walked up to me, and one of them started to say, "Hey, where did your other friends go? Surely you know it's not a good idea to be on your own." I sarcastically thanked him for the obvious advice, and I walked over to the cashier counter. That's when the other one says, "Wait a minute, girlie. I'm not finished talking to you." Super rude, but nothing in comparison to what he does next. The one with the Lakers jacket grabs a hold of my arm and then pulls me towards him, which causes me to lose my balance and fall right into his grasp. He then starts to put his hands into my hair and says I was really beautiful and he had never seen anybody like me. All of this, mind you, in a Disneyland shop. "Excuse me, is something wrong here?" a nearby cast member says as I pull away from him completely freaked out. "Oh, we're sorry. We're just leaving. I mistook her for my daughter." They then run out of the store to the absolute shock of myself, the cast member, and some nearby guests. Once I gained my composure, the cast member offered to call security for me, but for some stupid reason I told them just to forget about it. I wanted to get back to my hotel already and forget about those jerks. Yeah, looking back, I shouldn't have just written those freaks off, as it would have most likely prevented what would have occurred next. You see, we fast forward a bit and I'm now beginning the 10-minute walk back to the Marriott hotel. The large crowds and vibrant voices from earlier are now being replaced by the sounds of passing vehicles and crickets singing their nightly tunes. When I reached the stoplight that would let me cross over to the hotel, I ended up hearing a familiar voice. "Hold on, wait for me." I turned around and guess who I see? Remember the man with the Lakers jacket? Well, here he is, only this time he's on his own. "I'm glad I saw and caught up to you. I want to apologize from earlier. That was my mistake. Maybe I can treat you out to some lunch sometime to make it up to you." I didn't care if he was sorry. He had completely embarrassed me, and I tried so hard not to sock him in the face as revenge since I was so close to doing that earlier in the store. I told him I wasn't interested, and this actually sends him into a fit of rage. "I told you I was sorry. Isn't that enough? Look, don't make this harder than it needs to be." He starts to get closer and attempts to grab me yet again, but with the walk sign on, I pretty much booked it over to the Marriott hotel, where I see a security guard talking to a guest inside the front lobby. Obviously, he was surprised by what I was telling him, but he then goes outside to where I had last seen the creep. He was now long gone. So that was pretty much it. I went back to my hotel room, angry as all heck, calling my friends and telling them about what happened. But after my shower, I soon put the encounter behind me, and I went to bed. I actually did report it to the police, but nothing ever did turn up, which is a darn shame. Now, even though that did happen, I'm actually planning on returning back to Disneyland soon. Who knows? If you're at Disneyland and you see girls cosplaying as Love Live characters, then chances are it's myself and my friends. I just hope I don't see those creeps again, because if I do, I'm socking them right in the face. So that was the last story for today's episode. If this was the first time you joined us, then do consider subscribing and hitting that notification bell. That way you'll be notified of all the future uploads coming here to the channel. Also, make sure to leave a like rating if you enjoyed it, and leave a comment telling me what you all thought. Also, if you yourself have a scary story that you'd like to share, then send it in with my user submissions email, which appears on screen on my videos. tcfnarrations@gmail.com. Now, if you're looking for more of the Creepy Fox, then check out all the other videos I got on my channel. There's so much narration content that I'm sure you're going to enjoy. I've also got some exclusive Scary Stories narration episodes. If you'd like to listen to those, then for as little as $2 a month, you can become a Creepy Fox channel member and gain access to 10+ hours of extra additional content. I also got some cool merch which is featured down below. There's shirts, stickers, sweaters, coffee mugs, you name it. I got a lot of things that you might like, so check it out, see if you might find something on the Creepy Fox shop. Lastly, it's not something I really talk about or mention, but I wanted to go ahead and plug my other social media. If you wanted to follow me on my Instagram, I'm pretty active there. It's @TheCreepyFoxOfficial. You can see the name on the bottom right of all my videos. I like to post videos of my pets, specifically my dog and my birds, so if you're somebody that likes animals, then give me a follow and check out my stories. I'm always posting daily. Anyway, that is gonna go ahead and do it for today. Thank you so much everyone for watching today, and I'll go ahead and catch you all on the next episode. Until then, take care and have yourself an amazing day.
It's already 110 in the summer, and if it gets 1 degree hotter, I'm gonna kick your ass.